What's up? Are you trying to improve yourself? Do you not like yourself? Is there things about you wish you could change? Or maybe do you accept yourself and think nothing else should be changed at all? You're perfect as is, right? Well, today, Aaron, look, we're going to talk about self-acceptance versus self-improvement. This is the Existential Stoic podcast. I'm Danny, here, everybody. Randy, what's up, Randy?
Yo, Danny.
Yeah, I think this is actually an interesting one because you see so much now of like I think we get like almost like competing messaging. Like on the one hand, you get
Grind, no days
yeah,
off.
grind, improve. If you're at home and you're not working, you should be learning 17 other
What's
skills.
wrong with you? You're not a
Yeah,
millionaire. You're not living your best
yeah.
life.
You should be doing 50 other things for quote unquote passive income.
Yeah.
But then on the other hand, right, we get a lot of messaging about like you should just accept yourself for who you are, don't beat yourself up, right? And like I think there can be a lot of anxiety and stuff tied to like being not thinking you're good enough or like, thinking there's things wrong with you, you need to change all that. So yeah, I think this is an important topic that people don't think about a lot. Like, is there a way to do both two in a healthy way without, like accept
Mm,
yourself, but also want to improve? Or does self-improvement necessarily mean that you don't accept yourself? That's the other question.
mm.
Is it like,
Or is the only way to improve to actually accept yourself?
oh, I like that. Nice flip on that. Yeah, the
Hmm.
only way you can actually improve yourself is to first accept yourself
Hmm.
for who you are. Well,
Yeah,
that's
because
pretty much
otherwise you're
solved it, I
just
guess.
like
So do
fighting the
that.
pendulum. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, right.
Yeah. Well, it's an interesting concept because for years I've been going actually since I think it was like 13 or 14 when some douchebag teacher told me that I wasn't very friendly and I should read How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Yeah, it's been a long time you've
And
been reading self-help books, I know.
I was like, I'll teach him. I'll read it.
And
And then for
it's not even that
years,
good of a
yeah,
book.
yeah, years I was just down this whole self-help rabbit hole, read like every book in the genre. And literally they all just say the same thing over and over again, but
Usually it's the
yeah.
title
Exactly. It's a
repeated.
catchy title.
Yep.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
if it has F star CK in the title, it's going to sell a lot more than anything else. But
Well, because then you want to put out the notebooks,
yeah.
the dream
Or
journals,
if it's
you
written
know.
by somebody who is in the special forces or something like that, they
Yeah.
definitely sell a lot more too. But anyways, um, where was I going with this? Oh yeah, so like a long time I was down this self-help rabbit hole. And then, I the more and more I've learned now, the more it seems like self-acceptance is kind of the way to get everything that you want anyways.
Like, yeah, I mean, you need to accept yourself. You need, like, I think if you don't accept yourself, all these attempts to change yourself, they're going to be misdirected too. Because it's trying to, I think there is a problem with like the self-help movement can be good. Like when you're dealing with a problem, you need to resolve it. It's sometimes you need help, right? That's fine. But if you don't accept yourself, you might be trying to change yourself to conform to other ideas of what you think people want you to be like, rather than being yourself. And that's always going to fail,
Yeah,
right? Because you're always going to be trying to be somebody else, like acting.
they did a study one time. The biggest indicator that somebody is going to buy a self-help book is that they bought one in the past 6 months.
Yeah, that makes sense, right? Well, because there is no, but there's like it is like it's self-help. The industry is very, I think, gamified. There's these small little wins that make you feel really good. Especially if you start reading like self-help books. I mean, I always think of like you can do other things for self-improvement, obviously, but that industry particularly, I think it's built like the mobile video games, right? You do this, there's a little win. You do this, there's a little win, but then you finish the book and it's like most people aren't going to keep doing the exercise and stuff. So what do? They go get another book and there's these little wins and it feels good, right? And you're
Hmm.
in this, you're like always working on the project of yourself, kind of, you know?
Hmm. Yeah, so there's this author that I've read a few times recently, Oliver Berkman, and he just came out with a book, Meditation for Mortals, and it was pretty interesting. He was talking about some of this stuff with like self-acceptance, and one of the things he quoted someone else, I don't know who it was, but they were
Some
saying,
person.
yeah, all the stuff that you're trying to change, like just imagine for a moment that it's just going to be with you until the day you die. So like do that and kind of come to grips with it for a while. And then it's like I did that and I was doing that and like all this stuff because all these things I've been trying to change forever. And it's like, you know, if I just I'm like, well, if it's going to be with me till the day I die, that kind of takes a little bit of a load
That's like
off.
the negative visualization right from like the Stoics, right? You imagine the same that bad thing happening over and over again, and then it kind of loses its impact
Hmm.
after, 10, 20, 1,000 times. It kind of becomes
Yeah.
like not a
But
big
then,
deal, you know?
but it's also like I'm not fighting it so much now because I'm like, because if I think that I can do some self-improvement to improve and to get better and to make it go away, then like because it's not gone now, then it's like, oh, this is terrible. Life sucks, everything. But if I'm
Well,
like,
that's just it,
it's
right?
just going to be
Yeah.
with me forever, it may be improved, but it'll just be with me forever. Then I'm like, ah, you know what? Fine. It's with me forever. I can do what I can to improve it, but hey, it's with me.
That's a much healthier attitude too, right? Because I think that is the other side of it, which is part of self-help is making yourself feel like you're not good enough and that there are things wrong with you so that you have this urge to fix them, right? And it's like, and I think there is danger there because that can make you really get, down on yourself, angry with yourself, depressed, stressed, whatever.
Hmm.
It's funny. I always think of too, like when I think of, especially when I think of like my past and stuff, like, people always wish they could change things and all. And I'm always think of Nietzsche's eternal recurrence, the idea that everything repeats and all things are connected because it's like, well, if that stuff didn't happen, my life now would be probably very different. Like you can't imagine removing part of your life or part of yourself and the rest of it staying the same. It doesn't work that way. Like if you change one thing, everything else is going to change in order, to fit that. And
Hmm.
so I think that's the other side where self-acceptance comes in, like realizing that, you are who you are because of all these things that make up you.
Hmm.
And so you can work on them, but you also need to realize that like you can't just like wish them away, sort of, or like changing one thing might mean changing everything. And then would you like your life still?
True. Well, and so that kind of comes down to like the heart of everything being self-acceptance. Because it's like
Probably, yeah.
if you can just accept yourself the way things are, then you're already in nirvana. You're enlightened. I mean, that's just the way
Life's a lot
things are.
easier, isn't it? And I
Yeah.
think, well, isn't that funny that like the thing we struggle with the most is like our own consciousness?
Hmm.
Literally. Like it's kind
Yeah.
of funny. Like we create problems for ourselves. You know, we think, and it's so funny too that so much of it is false information. Like we think people see us a certain way, and therefore we need to change. But in reality, we probably aren't even presenting that way to other people. They probably don't even realize it if they even
Yeah.
care.
Yep.
And like, it's like when people talk about like really embarrassing thing happening and like being so, oh my God, like everybody's looking at me. Studies have shown like most people don't even remember the person that it happened to anything about it after the fact. They might have remembered the event, but everything else is like a blur because it's not them. It's not on
Hmm.
their radar, right? Like,
Yeah.
and I think, it's interesting, but yeah, it can be dangerous. You can get in this trap of, I think, trying to please other people rather than,
Well,
yourself.
because also it's very easy to compare your insides with somebody else's outsides. Like
Yeah.
you see their outside, you see their pictures on Instagram or whatever, you see their Facebook profile or whatever you're looking at, or like the few public appearances that they have. You see that perfect image that they have, and you're comparing that with the subjective experience of all this of basically the essence of being a human, where you just
Yeah.
have this wash of emotions all over the place. Some are good, some are bad. You have no idea what you're doing. There's no instruction manual. And it's just like everybody else has it together and I'm just a mess.
You know what's funny about that too? Now I'm now on Facebook, but I never was before. And I guess like sometimes like, like it recommends like people, that you think they think you might know or whatever. And I guess some of the accounts are old. But I stumbled the other day I came across one. It was someone we knew from high school. And it was a picture, like I guess their profile picture was like them, their wife, and their kids. But I know they're divorced now. But I mean like it's funny because like that's the thing, right? Like you're never gonna put pictures up that that side stuff in your life. You're not going to show people like you're not going to put a picture of you fighting with your partner or like,
Mhm.
I don't know, like things that are like things you're struggling with because you
Realistic, yeah.
generally people don't want people in the world to know about that. That's personal stuff.
Hmm.
So it's this curated representation of your life. And I think if you really knew the person, you know that like, yeah, it's a idea of their life. It's stuff that did happen. It's images, but it's not a real portrayal of who they are or what they're going through, right?
Hmm.
Yeah.
So that now that we've ruled out that, self-improvement is important, but self-acceptance is probably more important, how does one go about doing it?
This is the trick though, because I do think I think I'm a big fan of like lifelong learning and like And I think self-improvement does not have, this is the other thing I think, it doesn't have to be stuff like what we normally think of with self-help books. I think self-improvement can
Oh
just
no,
be
no, no. It
learning new,
100%. I have to grind,
that's
no
it.
days off. Yeah.
It's just about how to influence
Forget
people, make
forget the
friends.
haters, all of that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
that stuff.
Yeah.
No, but I think like it just can be learning too, learning new things, doing new experiences, that kind of stuff. And I think if you accept yourself too, doing those new things is easier as well because you're, not as, go ahead, do you want to say something?
Yeah, what you reminded me of when you were saying that, like improving, kind of like we talked about the cognitive distortion of black or white thinking, all or nothing thinking,
Oh
where
yeah,
like
yeah.
either I am or I'm not. But like self-improvement is kind of like if you can use more of a shades of gray type of thinking, where like maybe you want to improve, but it's not important to get all the way to that destination. Like
Yeah.
just having shades of gray, a little bit better, a little bit, every day, a little bit better.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good way to look at it too. And it can just enrich your life too. I think in many ways. Like I mentioned this before, like when I was deep into reading a bunch of sci-fi, like I started reading science books too, because I was interested more in like science. But I had no end goal. So it was fun because like, I could just look at stuff, check it out, and then like, just move to different topics as I felt like. There's no pressure. There's nothing yet that's still self-improving, right? Because I'm still learning. I'm still making connections. I'm still learning to critically think. Like all that stuff is important. And I think that's where, so much is lost because people get so focused on like these, I don't know, a very specific kind of self-improvement with self-help stuff that doesn't necessarily like enrich their lives. It's more about like
Making
how
money.
they interact with others, yeah, and like
Well,
making money or
it's
like,
it's interesting because the where it actually came from was back in the early 1900s, like early to mid 1900s. Self-development developed alongside this concept of making money and business.
no,
Actually,
really?
yeah, actually, this dude I was talking
Oh,
about, the dude who wrote the
huh.
book Meditation for Mortals, he wrote another book called The Antidote, which is like the why positive thinking is a crock of BS. And he goes into the whole history of it, how like the whole self-help movement and positive thinking came out of this whole like, how can I sell more?
Oh, I didn't know that. So it
Yeah.
came from like marketing basically and
Yeah.
stuff,
His books
which
are
makes
I've found his books very interesting because they shine like a totally different light on this whole self-help thing.
I love stuff like that though, because it is interesting. And it's like, we don't really we take for granted so much stuff. We never look at where it comes from or why
Mhm.
it started or what, like all that stuff that sometimes does paint a different picture,
Yeah,
you know? And I think
definitely.
it's also important to realize that like most things out there in the world, in our world, are advertising to us. They want us to buy their stuff. I mean, like it always cracks me up when I go to like a bookstore and you go to the self-help section and you see like everyone now has a journal. They have like a branded calendar, a branded
Hmm.
this thing, a branded that, because they just like want to sell you more and more crap. And it's like you don't
Hmm.
need any of that stuff. Like it's very funny. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah.
But I agree. I think self-acceptance probably is the crucial thing. And then you
Hmm.
can improve in the right way and enjoy it instead of like trying to change yourself.
Yeah. If I had to give some helpful hints on the self-acceptance, I I think the concept of like perfectionism and the all or nothing
God.
thinking can
Yeah.
lead people to really have difficulty accepting themselves because with both of those, you're like there's something wrong with you until you achieve 100%.
And they'll never be that. You can't because
Exactly.
there is no 100%. Yeah. So it's like
Yeah.
you're setting yourself up to always be a failure in some way or some
Hmm.
aspect. No, I
Yeah.
totally agree. I think yeah, that's a really good one. I think too, just being like easier on yourself too, with like how you talk to yourself, managing like your self-talk
Hmm.
and recognizing when you're being overly cruel. Like, I mean, I know we mentioned before, like, imagine like if you would say that to a friend, like, would you ever do that? And if
Hmm.
you wouldn't, then don't say it to yourself, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. I mean, that's a great point. That's one that David Burns t talks about all the time in his books. He calls it the double standard, where like
Mm.
you would say something to someone else that you wouldn't say to a friend. Or like what he always does with it is when someone has an issue they're dealing with, he would say like, okay, imagine someone they're going to be like your twin, more or less. I mean, they have a different name, but they have the same job as you, they have the same situation as you, they have
Otherwise, the
this,
same kind of,
otherwise
yeah.
exactly the same. Now say that to them. And a lot of, I mean, sometimes people are very harsh on everybody, and so it doesn't work, but it's just one technique. But uh, a lot of times people are like, no, I'd never say that to somebody else. That's just ridiculous. Like, and it's like, well,
Yeah.
could you see how maybe saying it to yourself because you're identical in every single way? Can you see how that's ridiculous? Yeah.
Yeah, and I think you know the other thing too about self-acceptance is I think one of the hard ones for a lot of people too is the expectations we place on ourselves. And
Mm.
they can come from like growing up. They can come from like, and it doesn't have to be like, growing up stuff, because then you have to be like stated. It can be like indirect expectations, but
Hmm.
you carry those with you. And I think that can be like that was a huge thing for me for a long time, right? Like it's a weight you're like, and that I think ties into perfectionism and all that crap too. So like trying to, realize that like you don't have to live up to anybody's expectations. You don't have to meet anything, I think is an important thing to keep in mind so you can be yourself.
That's a good point. I remember there's this thing from AA called Just for Today. It's like a little saying that they have, but it's basically just focusing on one day at a time. And
Yeah.
I always get way ahead of myself where I'm trying to figure out my whole entire life today. And it's a healthy reminder for me that I just need to do just today. I just need to make it
Yeah.
until I go to sleep tonight. That's it.
But that's the other thing too, I think, is like we also, it's so easy to imagine. We talked about this before, like, that our problems are totally unique, right? That like that when I'm dealing with this, nobody else has ever faced in the history of humanity, it's the most important thing, all that crap. I think it's also like good to kind of give yourself a reality check and remember that like one, everybody's had similar experiences. It might not be identical, but they'll be able to understand. And two, like you're not alone in this. You're a person. Human experience is yes, it can be different, but it's also very kind of uniform too. We all go through like that's why I like reading philosophy. You see these guys going through the same problems we're going through today, thousands of years ago.
Hmm.
And it just kind of gives you a peace of mind that, oh, we haven't worked this out. Nobody's figured out the secret sauce.
Yeah, not yet.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
Yeah. Anything
sweet.
else you want to add?
Mm-mm.
All right. Well, there you have it then. Self-acceptance versus self-improvement. I guess we lean more in favor of self-acceptance, but you can be your own judge. If you like this episode, check us out on YouTube wherever you get your podcasts. We have literally hundreds. Like, share, subscribe. It helps us out a lot. We'll be back later this week with another episode, though. Until then, later, Andy.
Later, Danny.